Is the food industry big fat liars for saying when that sloppy Joe expires? Food industry experts tell CNN that most companies pick expiration dates based on when they think the food will stop tasting the best, not when it actually goes bad. If that's true, then kidney beans expire before they're even canned. In other words, those expiration dates are often more about protecting the brand than food safety.
Hey there, everyone. I was watching Gutfeld, I believe it was yesterday, and they were talking about food best by dates. And this is a story that's making its rounds on all sorts of mainstream media outlets and everything. And all of these people are either they're acting shocked or they are shocked by this stuff. Like you can eat this after its best by date, and they're completely floored. And it's this big city mentality, I suppose, of, you know, as soon as that date comes that's on this package of macaroni and cheese or this package of spaghetti noodles or whatever, then it's time to just throw it out. And I mentioned, last week in a video I did about living like they did in the Great Depression, is we need to rethink our mentality about how we do things these days. And this is one of those examples. I saw on Gutfeld, some of the guests were just, I'm not chancing it. I'm not doing this. I mean, that mentality. And I'm sitting there almost laughing at it going, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Do you pay attention to this stuff?
What I do pay attention is that we're hearing rumblings of food shortages and we're hearing rumblings of trucking shortages. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, this little article comes out and we're like, expiration dates, what does it really mean? Ooh. It's a suggestion so they can keep bad food in the shelves longer so people will buy more. That's what it looks like to me. This is not one of those woke things. Instead of actually trying to fix a problem, they just lower the bar.
In all seriousness, when I was like a poor college kid, that's when you didn't pay that much attention to them.
Right.
Because it would say like best by like December, and I'm like, well, what's the deadly by date? Because I don't have any money. And in general, I do not trust expiration dates at all. When I used to drink a lot, I used to drink quite a bit. I don't anymore. But I remember I was like buying wine once, and they make some good boxed wine. It's not what it used to be, right? And I bought a box of wine, and the guy was like, this will last up to 14 days. Dude, it only lasted like 48 hours.
I feel like this is not that good of a sell. Like, when that date is just when it starts to taste bad. Like, I don't want to be an elitist, but like, I'm looking for more from the food I select than just won't make you die.
First world problem.
Now, granted, there are some things, you've got like milk, meats, those fresh things that you do have to pay attention to. And it's not necessarily the date that's printed on the package. That's a pretty good guideline for a lot of this stuff. But it doesn't mean that it's going to, sometimes it doesn't even last until that date. Milk is a good example. You can go a few days past the best by date, but you don't know until you taste it. And you can usually tell with milk. Meat, the same thing. So, but when you're talking about canned foods, when you're talking about these boxed meals and stuff, there's a big difference between a best by date and an expiration date. I want to go through what I do here at my house and my thoughts on all this stuff, because I know there's 15 different. You ask 10 different people, you're going to get 15 different ideas on all this stuff. Some people will say this stuff will last forever. Some people will say go a year past the expiration date. I just want to give you my thoughts on it and what I think the standards or the best practices are now compared to some sort of disaster situation where I think that would probably change. So when it comes to long-term food storage stuff, pantry foods, canned foods, and all of that, we've got this article that I wrote a little while back that I've got a couple images in here that go through some of what the best by dates are going to be from the grocery store. So you're going to see at the grocery store, you're going to see spaghetti noodles. It's going to say it's good for about a year, or the home style bakes, or the popcorn, all that stuff. You're going to see these best by dates on there, but that doesn't mean this is how long they're going to last. Especially a lot of this stuff when you think about ramen noodles and, maple syrup, granola bars. Honey is one of those that can, some people say it lasts forever. While I mean, it will. It's not going to go bad. The texture and all of that is going to change over time. And I think that's what I know that's why these companies put these labels on there, is because it's basically their quality control. They are putting it on there because their product is going to be the best. It's going to taste the best in that time frame. So just because your can of Spam is 3 or 4 years old doesn't mean necessarily that it's bad. It just may not taste the same as that company wants you or wants that product to taste. So just keep those in mind. I'll leave that link to that article down below. That just gives people that are thinking about this stuff, that are just new at this stuff, it gives them an idea about different things you can put in your pantry that are going to have those long-term shelf lives. Now, I think, like I said, there's a different set of standards for now and a different set of standards for some sort of disaster situation that may last a little while. I think also those things are changing just for the coming months. I think those standards need to change a little bit. With me, I will go past that best by date, or even the canned foods that have the expiration dates on them. I will go past that. There are some things that I just won't mess with, because with canned foods, botulism is one of those tough ones, because you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, so you just really don't know. So there's always that lingering feeling. If I'm eating something that is really far past an expiration date, it's one of those, I'm not going to chance it. Now, in a SHTF event or a disaster or something like that, probably going to, rethink that whole thing and think about, eating something that is maybe a couple years expired. But my goal, and I've been doing this for the last few months, once, you start hearing about these food shortages and all that stuff, I've really rethought my inventory and rotation and everything. And what I've done is changed everything to be more like a grocery store, that first in, first out method that we hear about all the time. And what I do, I've got this one picture here of one of the shelves down in my basement. And this is basically everything that most people would put in their kitchen cabinets, the canned foods and all that stuff. I put it on a shelf where I can access both sides of this shelf, and everything is right there in front of my face. When you put stuff in the cabinets in your kitchen, and I've done this a few times over the years, where stuff gets pushed in there, stuff gets stuffed to the back, and then you don't know what you have until a year or two later. You go through that stuff and you pull all that food out, and you've got stuff that's expired, 2-3 years expired, a whole bunch of stuff. This method allows me to bypass that. Now, in my kitchen cabinets, I have all my long-term, my number 10 cans, a lot of my long-term food storage stuff that fills in those back areas of those cabinets. So I can't stuff a whole bunch of stuff back there, and then 2 years down the line, you're pulling stuff out, and a lot of it is expired. I don't want to say all of it, but so this allows me to take all that stuff that's usually in the kitchen and put it down here, and I can see it. And what I do with this is I see on this shelf if I need more chicken broth, if I need more refried beans. I can see that there's only a couple cans on here. I can look over to the other area and see how many cases of something I have. And if I pull one of those cases and put it on this shelf, then I can put on my shopping list that I need another case of refried beans. I need another case of chicken broth or whatever that product is. But it allows you to keep a better inventory of everything, and not be as wasteful as before, because that's, with inflation and everything right now, that is a huge issue for me. That's why I went and bought a freezer. I don't have the picture of the freezer, but it's just a small freezer, about half the size of the ones that you might see, you might put in your garage, the old school ones. And I don't remember the exact size of it, but I went and bought that freezer just for meat. So I know exactly, I don't have to put the meat in my upstairs freezer. I know that that's where this stuff is. My upstairs freezer can be for vegetables and stuff like that. That way it's a little bit more organized. I'm not digging through this freezer. I don't like to put a whole bunch of different stuff in it, because it's one of those deep freezers. And, you would, in a year from now, if you are putting a whole bunch of stuff in there, you pull that stuff out, and all of a sudden you're pulling out popsicles, or you're pulling out cans of or bags of corn or stuff like that. So I just use it strictly for meat. But that's what I've been doing recently, is getting more organized to reduce that waste, because when you've got everything being 20 or 30% more expensive these days, you really do have to rethink. We do have to rethink as a society how we're doing things. My mentality of, I've gotten dogged for this a bunch of times, my mentality of clean your plate and eat everything, waste not, want not type stuff, because that's how I was raised. We didn't have a whole lot of money, and we had, us 3 kids and our parents, and there wasn't a whole lot of food to go around. So you ate what you got when you got it. That mentality is, sort of paying off at this point, because it is that thing where you don't, a lot of people just kind of willy-nilly, hey, I didn't eat this, just throw it out, just throw it out, just throw it out. You really have to rethink that. The leftovers, the meals that you cook. We right now, they're part of our meal plan is deciding, okay, if I make this, it's going to cost this much, but how many, can I freeze it afterwards? And then it becomes a meal later. Lasagna is a good example of this. Chili is a good example of this. Jambalaya, stuff like that, where you can cook a little bit more than you might normally, and then you put that in the freezer, or you save it for later, and it creates another meal, or you eat those leftovers afterwards. So I think it's funny that that's the mentality these days of people, is that, it says we should throw it away, so we should just throw it away. And I know this is a little bit like preaching to the choir, because a lot of us preppers understand this stuff big time. But it is just one of those things that people, we've fallen into that trap of, this is what the company says, so this is what I need to do. And the only reason the company's putting on that is to cover their own butts, and make sure that their product is not going to get bad reviews or anything like that, because it doesn't taste quite like it should. But it doesn't mean that it's going to go bad, like you're going to open a box of spaghetti and all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of mealworms or something in there. Just not going to happen, especially if you store it properly, store it in a cool, dry place, and that stuff is going to last far longer than those best by dates that they put on there. Now, again, canned foods I'm a little bit more leery about because of the botulism aspect. That's something you can't taste or smell or even sense at all until it's too late. But that being said, doesn't mean that I'm going by that expiration date on there either. If it's a can of green beans or a can of corn or something like that, I'm probably going to give it a shot. But there are those high aesthetic foods and stuff like that sometimes I think twice about it. Also, dented cans.
Yeah, it's a flashback of buying dented cans. That's how broke I was. Used to buy dented cans.
I would never do that. I'm too scared of botulism.
Oh,
I spent my whole childhood terrified of botulism. I don't even know how I heard about it.
I don't know either.
Another thing, before I get out of here, another thing with canned foods is that if you don't eat it, don't store it. So that is just taking up space. That's wasting room. We don't eat a lot of canned vegetables here, but canned corn, canned green beans, stuff like that is just fine. Broccoli and asparagus and stuff like that, I just don't like that canned food flavor that comes out in those. I like that stuff baked and cooked well. So we don't store a lot of that stuff. We don't store any of that stuff because it just doesn't get used, and it'll sit on your shelf for a couple years. Now, if you get a great deal, why not? But if it sits on your shelf for a couple years and then you have to throw it away, it's kind of pointless to have it anyway. So store what you eat what you store, all of that stuff. With canned foods, it's kind of tough because the frozen stuff and the fresh stuff is always better. But if you have some of that stuff that may expire or maybe getting close to expire, incorporate that into your meal plan. Fruits are great. Canned meats are great. All of those things that you're going to eat, that we're going to eat, those are the types of things I store. The refried beans, all different kinds of beans, because we make chili and all sorts of things with the beans themselves. Those things you can incorporate into recipes. So eat what you store what you eat. Make sure you're doing your inventory and rotation. Figure out a way. You don't have to do it exactly like I was talking about, but figure out a way that you can do this that makes it as easy as possible, and you're going to have the least amount of waste as possible, because in the coming months with the rising prices and everything, it's going to be, it's already super. You can't even go to the grocery store these days with $100 and get a full week's of groceries. It just doesn't work like it did just a few years ago. So make sure that you're using the stuff that you actually do buy, and you're incorporating all that stuff into your diet and all that. So at any rate, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this. Like I said, I'll leave the link to that article that shows some of those different products that have the longer shelf lives. And again, this article, it's all the best by date. So it is not the expiration dates of these things. This is the dates you're going to see when you go into the grocery store. And then you decide how much longer you're going to use or be able to use those things. I've had spaghetti noodles that are a couple years old. I've got flour that I've put in 5-gallon buckets myself that are, you're supposed to keep them for 15 years or so. They're getting pretty close to that range. I've got rice that is 5-6 years old. I've got all sorts of things that are far past those expiration dates, and they're just fine. But again, there's some things I just kind of don't play with right now. But in an emergency situation, those guidelines, my personal guidelines, might change a little bit. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, any thoughts on this, leave them in the comment section below. As always, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure and subscribe. I'll be doing videos a few times a week over here. But with that, take care and prepare, everyone. We'll talk to you all later.